Very good. Gave us some good insight into what PCORI is starting. Our next speaker is Brian Sweet. Brian is going to give us a perspective from the pharma manufacturer viewpoint. I've known Brian for a long time. He's a great guy, good pharmacist like myself. He's a executive director of healthcare alliances at AstraZeneca Pharmaceuticals in Wilmington. Leads AZ's healthcare alliance strategy, including build out of real-world evidence capability, and again getting to real-world evidence in preparation for comparative effectiveness. And formerly Chief Pharmacy Officer at WellPoint in Indianapolis, led the clinical service team, including the WellPoint National Pharmacy and Therapeutics Committee. And I will turn it over to Brian and remind the audience that I think there are cards in your folders for you to write questions down on. So I'm going to be expecting questions at the end. So as they're speaking, please write down and jot down a question. Thank you.
So what Dr. Gagnon did not say is that there was a comparative effectiveness study that went on before the session today, and they were comparing the ability to get speakers to the session, and I failed. So I was the one that was the latest here. I was on the wrong campus, in the wrong building, and fortunately Patricia got me here, so thank you so much. I'm not here because I'm with AstraZeneca, even though AstraZeneca is funding this, so my full disclosure is two things. One, I'm here because of my pedigree and where I've come from and what I'm doing. And second, I'm not here because of funding, but AstraZeneca is actually funding this initiative. So I want to make sure that I'm clear on what I'm here for. I am on salary for AstraZeneca, by the way. That's my third disclosure. And salary is not a bad thing. My title has changed. That's my fourth disclosure. This is only the fifth title change in 6 positions and 7 bosses since I joined 2 years ago. 15 years in the healthcare industry, and I've been actually 23 years in the healthcare industry, 15 years with WellPoint, and I can tell you that I've never seen so much change in 2 years in my life. And I don't think it's just us. I'm seeing this across the country. I've been traveling a lot in 2 years. I don't think I've had more than 2 days in the office in 2 years, and I've seen a lot. And so it's not just me that's changing, it's the world that's changing. It's the US economy and the US healthcare system that's changing, and changing rapidly. And that's not a bad thing, it just is what it is. So my new payer title is Executive Director of US Payer and Real World Evidence. And why is that? Because of this. On the left-hand side, you see that it's the old fee-for-service. If you pay me, I will do more procedures, right? That's what, fill the beds, right? That's the whole concept. But the new world with PPACA, and even without PPACA, even if PPACA doesn't survive for some reason, the whole world has changed to outcomes-based payments, payment innovation. So no longer are we in this world of fill my beds and pay me for doing more services. We're now into pay me for doing the right outcomes for patients, pay me for quality, pay me for doing the right things for the health outcomes for the patient. Isn't that interesting? Patient-centered work. Isn't that nice? So the payer world, now known as traditional payer, kind of the Blues of the world, the Aetnas, the Cignas, the Uniteds, have been on the left-hand side kind of traditionally asking for things like safety, efficacy, tolerability. They're now all moving towards this right-hand side of the equation, which is tell me if your medical cost offsets for your product are worth it for me to invest in your product. Tell me whether or not you're improving quality of life. Tell me whether or not you're reducing total cost of care. And if you're not, Why should I pay for your product? Because I have generics. I've got lots of generics available. So this is the world I live in now, right? I was driving the right-hand side of this equation. Now I'm fulfilling the value proposition of the right-hand side of this equation. How do I make sure that our products reduce hospitalizations, reduce ER visits, keep people out of the hospital, put them back at work, reduce problems with absenteeism, improve activities of daily living? These are the things that matter to patients, right? So put yourself in the patient eyes as a pharmaceutical company and say, I can no longer do surrogate outcomes. I can no longer provide HbA1c, blood pressure lowering, cholesterol lowering. That's great, but it's just a surrogate marker. It doesn't mean anything to the patient at the end of the day. So we've got to find a way to get to those outcomes that really matter. What's interesting is that last month at Quad AI, my team actually presented a nice CER study comparing our product in respiratory versus a major competitor in respiratory who has most of the market share, and showed not just equal efficacy and effectiveness in the marketplace, observational-wise, but reduced ER visits and hospitalizations and lower total cost of care as a result of a very rigorous CER study. What bold work we're doing on this stuff. This is not easy for a pharmaceutical company to say, I'm going to stretch beyond label. I'm going to go beyond RCT. I'm going to go beyond FDA. I'm going to do now what I know is real important for the real world and the observational world for doctors and patients and providers and payers. And we're doing that in multiple categories. Why? Because on the right-hand side of this data is the trial situation, right? You got interventional trials, pragmatic, randomized, evidence-based syntheses, et cetera. These are really good stuff, right? We randomize patients. We show that there's controls. We know that there are situations where patients are observed and doctors are monitored and they're told what evidence-based guidance to monitor, and we get good outcomes for our products, and the FDA approves it, or the NICE approves it, or the government approves it in Germany. But what happens on the left-hand side of this equation? A change, because doctors and patients don't act in the real world the way they act in randomized clinical trials. Why? They're not told what evidence to follow. They're not told how to comply. They're not reminded to comply. And so you have all this change. You have demographic changes. You have a whole bunch of changes in the whole environment, of which once our products are revealed to the whole world, even the US market alone, then you have this whole new randomized clinical trial going on, and we are the guinea pigs. We are. And so how do you monitor what goes on? How do you know how your drug is going to be effective and safe once you put it out to the real world? You don't know. So you better darn well know, because if you don't know, somebody else is going to figure it out. And I'll look back at the Baycall example, right? Not to call out a competitor, but they're no longer a competitor. Why? Because a provider in California, when I was on the provider side, found out there was a safety problem with the product. Really? Was there really a safety problem? Do we know it was cause and effect? You can go back to the days of phenylpropanolamine. Okay? Great decongestant. Great decongestant. ENTs loved this product. Okay? Was generic at the time that it was discovered because of diet uses, that it was a safety problem. Why? Because of the dosing. Was it really cause and effect? No one defended it. We don't know. So we have to know the data. HRT, think about it. Think of the ups and downs of HRT therapy over the last 20 years. Huge changes in evidence. So you make the decisions on evidence based upon what you know, but for us, if we don't discover the best data and don't provide the best data for our products, we cannot provide a value proposition. We don't even deserve to be on the market. We should be more informed about our products and more able to provide the evidence on our products than anybody else, whether it's cost of care data, quality of care data, outcomes data, you name it. We should know better than anyone else. And the good thing for you is I don't have a lot of slides. So even though I'm verbose, I have a lot of, there's very few slides here. So why is the evidence wave now? Why do we care now versus 10 years ago, versus 20 years ago? Well, public and policy have realized that the evidence base for clinical and payer decision making is inadequate, right? So you get private and public payers saying, you guys are not producing the data you need to provide, whether you're diagnostic or your drug or your other procedure, to tell me whether or not I can make a good healthcare decision. And there's concern about the enormous and unrelenting increase in the cost of healthcare, right? That's a no-brainer. We know that's going out there. And then there's a realization that the alternative is a blunt cost control measure. Why? Because if I don't prove the evidence and value of my products, guess what I get? Prior auth, step edit, tier 3, not covered. And that's my old world. But now I've got to show that you should not do that to my product because I can reduce your total cost of care. I can help you enhance patient outcomes. And if I don't do that, then shame on me as a manufacturer. So why is CER important for pharma? I've talked about this a lot. But what does the appropriate patient look like for our products? And who can benefit best from our medicines? So if you look at the Plato data for Brilinta, which is in label, so I can talk about it. We did a head-to-head study against the gold standard and showed where we benefit better for patients than the gold standard of product in the marketplace. That's bold because most manufacturers don't want to compare themselves to anything else in the marketplace other than placebo just to get FDA approval. And that's the standard. And here's the challenges. It's called FDAMA 114. How many in the audience know FDAMA 114? A couple folks. Interesting. I didn't know this until I came to the pharma side. I really didn't understand it. And my fellow colleagues on the health plan and PBM side across the country do not know this until I talk to them. They have no idea what's going on here. FDAMA 114 is a legislation that prevents manufacturers from proactive communication about health economic data unless you have a directly related indication substantiation point that you can make on your product. So my legal team, my compliance team says you got two things. One, it was consistent with label, not the same as label, but consistent with label. And two, it was HECON data that was a primary endpoint in the study. And if you don't have those two things, you can't talk about it unless the customer asks you exactly the right question. So they have to say, Brian, do you have a health economic modeling study on Brilinta for subpopulations of patients that do X, Y, Z? I mean, that's the kind of specifics that FDAMA 114 requires you to do. So we have asymmetry of voice in the marketplace where a Caremark or United or WellPoint, and I'm not picking out people, I'm just saying they can do their own studies and they can talk about it, they can publish it, they can press release it. I can't unless it meets all these situations for FDAMA 114. It does only apply to health economic information. And health economic information is only one type of real-world evidence, which is where I function on for AZ. Proactive does not include reactive scientific exchanges, so we can reactively respond to a customer. And the payer audience means any individual or group that's a healthcare practitioner So someone who's a decision maker, and that's directly approved to the indication, then we're able to talk about it. So the second bullet down is the important one, value. Value is important because it's about who you are and where your perspective is coming from. Do you value total cost of care? Do you value unit cost? Do you value one product versus another? Do you value reducing ER visits, hospitalizations? It depends if you're a PBM or a health plan or an employer. I mean, all your different vantage points are coming in here to the value perspective. And for us, we have to deliver value to all of those customer stakeholders. So my final slide is we remain focused on proving the value of our products. We want to prove value to all of those different constituents. We want patients, providers, payers, and employers to understand that we have an opportunity to deliver value to the marketplace. My function is real-world evidence, which is maybe kind of a new term that maybe you might not know, but it's really about observational type data, retrospective analyses, data that is beyond clinical trials, but also could be incorporated into clinical trials. So we're bringing observational and real-world evidence type data sets back into our 2, 3, 4 phase trials to say, I want that data available for those that are paying the bill when I come to market. I want it in my label. I want to be able to talk about it. I want to show that I reduce ER visits, reduce hospitalizations. I want to improve outcomes, reduce total cost of care. And if I can't do that, and my competitor can, then I shouldn't market the product. So, payer perspective.
Very good.